Well, today I'm not sure how this video is going to directly connect with my family counseling courses or with my social work with victims of abuse courses, but I also feel it connects with everything we're ever going to do or everything I do or have done. It's always been there in the background. I was very, very lucky, and I had there's a lot of things about my own academic and professional journey that have been a little bit quirky or unexpected, certainly unexpected to me. But here's one thing. So I left school very early, as I've told you before, and then I went back to adult upgrading. So one of the things I loved about adult upgrading was every student worked at their own pace on the things they wanted to work on. So you could be sitting in a big room and there was kind of like a little screen in front of you, and you worked on modules. So I had been out of school for a while, and I went back, and I think I was assessed at grade 4 math. I went right back to children's math, but on reading comprehension and language skills, I was at a grade 12 level, which was pretty amazing because I'd only finished grade 8. So I felt overjoyed by that. So why do I put that out there? I put that out there because I profoundly appreciated the chance to go back to school on my own terms, at my own pace, in my own unique zones. And I put that example out there that in math I was like a child, but at reading and writing and comprehension I was at a grade 12 level. Why is that important? Many times in life, humans get reduced to one characteristic or trait, like homeless people at the shelter, elders in the nursing home, addicted people. Right? And what I wish you to always, always, always remember is there are patterns, and we can be experts on patterns, but each person is their own unique story. So said differently, if someone had said, well, you're at about a grade 4 level in all your subjects, or you're at a grade 12 level in all your subjects, both of those would have been completely wrong, because in science I might have been at grade 8, history I'm still at grade 4, right? But at the same time I've learned a lot about history on my own, right? So my point being, the imprint or profile, let's say, of every single person, not just in education, but in life skills or problem-solving skills or emotional strengths, it's all over the place. You can't say this person is 22, therefore blah, 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 because all 22-year-olds are blah, 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 blah. No, they're not, right? In a way that's obvious, but in many of our agencies as social workers, this is what happens. People get collapsed into one category based on one variable, and it's a false template. It's unnatural, it's unwholesome, and it's sometimes a real turnoff to the client to be, oh, we think you're at this or you're at that. So technically I was at a grade 8 level in everything because that's all I'd ever graduated from. But even though I graduated with grade 8, I had regressed to grade 4 because I wasn't using my math. But I had continued using my reading, writing skills. So think about that every time you're engaging with a client. If they say to you, I passed grade 8 at school, that doesn't give you very much data. It gives you one chunk of data. What have they been doing since then? My grandfather had very minimal formal education, but he taught himself, to my own amazement, and he knew no one in this zone. He knew about stocks, buying stocks. Now, where and how he ever got that wisdom, I don't know. But when he died, he had $250,000 in the bank. Cool. Right? And he lived his life. He had his house paid for, his camp paid for. He always had a car on the road that was in beautiful shape, right? So he had learned all kinds of life skills. In cultural studies, they have a word called an organic intellectual, which I think is a brilliant concept. You can have someone who finishes grade 12 and then they get a job and they live a life where they just stay right there, You have other people who have grade 8, but they read, they write, they think, they watch documentaries, they engage with the world. So they're an organic intellectual. By the way, elders in First Nations culture are often, in the past, people would be very racist and diminishing and awful, and oh, that person has grade 8. Yeah, grade 8 in the colonized schoolroom, but in their own culture, in their own community, they have the equivalent of a PhD in terms of their culture, their language, their heritage, their spirituality, their beliefs and practice. You know, they're an elder, they're a wise person who knows a bazillion things about hunting or trapping or hides or vegetables or how to use nature's herbs and medicines. Don't be imposing your colonial badges. You know, like with the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, you get little things on your shoulder here for learning certain skills. We as settler folk are very vulnerable to saying, oh, this person has a PhD and they're so wise and I should listen to them. And this person has a grade 8, maybe I shouldn't listen to them because they just pump gas at a gas station. Don't diminish people in that way, and don't use that as false hierarchization of people's worth and values and knowledge. So there's my little spiel on that one. But going back to the story. So I went back to adult upgrading. The way that I could succeed was exactly what they delivered to me in letting me work at my own pace on my own topics. So I could do grade 5 math for half the day, and then I could do grade 11 science for a couple hours. It was up to me. I controlled it, and I just passed these little modules, and I just kept moving. I could come in Monday morning, I could come in Friday night, my own pace. In a way, to me, that is the most incredible miracle, and in another way, it's kind of, who the hell ever came up with the idea that we all have to go in cohorts of grade 9, grade 10, grade, right? That, who reduced us to those segmentations? Mm-hmm. So, now, the next part of my life. So I finished my adult upgrading, and what had motivated me was I wanted to go to college. And to go to college, you needed to have a minimum of grade 10 in this and this, and grade 12 and that to get in. So I did that, and I got it. So then my next sort of phase was to figure out, what do I want to do? Now that I'm here, what do I want to do, right? So I did kind of, I think they now call it a general arts, where you do a year where you do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and kind of experiment. So I did something like that. And then I decided, okay, social work sounds like a plan, so I applied for social work and I got in. So, my second miracle. So first miracle was adult upgrading, go at your own pace. Second miracle was Carl Rogers, client-centered, yaha, yaha. So what client-centered Carl Rogers, and I've got all these books, and again, at the time, I didn't really realize it was such a miracle. Going through adult upgrading, I just thought, well, this is what you do in adult upgrading. I subsequently realized I was really lucky to find that context where you just went at your own pace. Right? Then I do this client-centered. So it was a 2-year college diploma in social work. And Carl Rogers believed in, and you can tell just from the titles, Carl Rogers, Freedom to Learn. And I'll read a little bit. Carl Rogers, Freedom to Learn, and this is from him. I was eager for teachers to know something of what we had learned so that they could try it for themselves. We had found a way of being with students that was sharply different from conventional education. It did not involve teaching so much as it involved us in a process that we came to think of as facilitation of learning. It involved a deep trust in students rather than the distrust prevalent in most classrooms. It involved an attempt to be with the learner in a number of ways. It meant being with the student in a sensitive understanding of his or her own interests, desires, directions. It involved being a real person in the teacher-student relationship rather than playing a role. That is so revolutionary. Again, I didn't realize it at the time. So this was a 2-year social work college diploma. And the guiding theory of the program was client-centered Rogerian. So, just by the title, so Freedom to Learn, Carl Rogers on Personal Power, Inner Strength and Its Revolutionary Impact. And you can see these books are still with me. I guess this is 30-something years later. I still have them with stickies in them. Person to Person, The Problem of Being Human. We'll read the back of this. This book could not have been written, compiled, or published if it had not been for the belief of all concerned that it has a relevance for human beings today. It seems possible that the reader may come to feel something like this himself or herself. So, Carl Rogers, by the way, is not in here, and neither is client-centered. And this is one of our encyclopedias of Canadian social work, so I'm a bit perplexed by that. They may have given it a different name. That often happens. Sometimes it's called Rogerian therapy. Sometimes it's called client-centered therapy. Sometimes it's put under humanistic therapies or dynamic therapies. The idea that every unique person, if given the space and time and pacing to make their own choices, will be way more motivated. Also, it ruptures the assumptions of competition. So, in this Rogerian stuff here, here's another one, Person to Person, on becoming a person, and then the Carl Rogers Reader. This was after his death. He was one of the most influential psychologists in American history, the founder of client-centered therapy. So, hold all those thoughts. So, I'm in this program on client-centered Rogerian social work. And there's two teachers, a male and a female. And the way the assignments work were, you were given at the beginning of the semester, here's the courses, and you were told, here's what you have to accomplish in these courses. And then you showed up and did things and learned things, and you were often encouraged to do small group work, so like 3 people, 4 people, a lot of role plays. You be the client, I'll be the social worker, and there'd be an observer who'd take notes. And we did tons of these little role plays to learn, to actually do it. Do it. Don't read about it, do it, right? And each of us were encouraged when we were in the role of client to be authentic, to pick something that we sincerely cared about. So you kind of spent your days being, half a day being a client on real things, and half a day of being a therapist, right? And so you got to clean your own closets. I remember probably once a week, somebody crying, somebody weeping, somebody sobbing, somebody howling, because we were actually doing it, right? And the other thing that in retrospect I can realize is the kind of schooling I had from grade 1 to grade 8 was very much about obedience, control, sequencing, following, well, there's 28 other people who are doing this on Tuesday at 3 o'clock, so you will do this on Tuesday at 3 o'clock. Even if you've been up all night, even if you're on the verge of suicide, even if your life is just one horrific shitstorm, and now the teacher is telling you you're supposed to learn this stuff about 1852 or some civil war, and you think, what? Why? Why do I care about the Civil War? What's that? I often remember sitting in class thinking, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Because much of what was talked about, for myself being a white bush trash woman, seemed completely irrelevant. Why do I need to? I remember watching them when they landed on the moon. They had that on TV, and I thought, why am I being forced to sit here and watch some men on the moon? I'm never going to go to the moon. I'm not from America. I don't want to be an astronaut. Why am I having my time wasted? I could be like planting flowers, or I could be reading a book, or I could be doing something useful, like dishes or laundry. I remember that was just, oh my God, this has nothing to do with me. And of course, many working class kids feel that way. They feel everything we're learning has nothing to do with us. Those of you who are familiar with Montessori learning, one of the things from my understanding of Montessori learning is very similar to this. She's like a sibling, too client-centered, in that they, if from my understanding Montessori learning, ask kids in the morning, what do you want to do today? And then the kids kind of make their own learning plan. So the kids say, well, I would really like to learn about building a boat. And the other kid says, I would like to learn about planting flowers, right? So the kid kind of says, this is what I'm going to learn, and then like a constant independent study. We call it that later when you're in your master's degree, or a directed reading is what it's called at a master's level, or an independent study. And you pick something and you go and pursue it and pursue it and pursue it and pursue it. 1, you're super motivated because you picked it. 2, you're excited. 3, you can be delighted by what you discover. You're on a big adventure. You're a freaking pirate. You're going to go and unearth some jewels that have been buried somewhere, right? Yay, you! Go, 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 go! And so, my grade 1 and grade 8 was about obedience, and not about delight, and not about excitement. It was basically, if you've seen the movie Precious, which we talk about, where she's just sitting there and kind of moving from semester to semester, and then we discover she's 14 or 15 and she can't read and write. How is this possible? She's been passing. Obviously people weren't paying much specific attention to her. And she wasn't paying much specific attention to her teachers. It was a completely wasted, let's say, 8 years of her life, or 10 or whatever, right? If she's that age and she can't read and write. Mm-hmm. So, adult upgrading, I got to be the goddess of my own learning journey. Woohoo! Because I also was working, I had part-time jobs, I had projects, I had things, I had stuff going on. I was in control of when and what I did. So then I kind of stumbled into this Rogerian client-centered social work thing. We also got to talk about issues we cared about, content knowledge, books. We got to be excited, and with our group of 3, so let's say in our group of 3 we wanted to learn about Alzheimer's, or wanted to learn about poverty or indigenous issues. So the 3 of us could learn, and then we would role play and learn some more and role play. And now here's one of the miracles, another miracle. So many miracles. The way this program was set up, I knew in September, as did the other students, by December I have to produce, let's say, I can't remember specifically, let's say 5 courses, 1 on group work, 1 on research, 1 on communication skills, 1 on the history of the profession or whatever. I knew in each of those courses I had to produce 2 essays or 2 book reviews or 2 role plays, or, I knew what I had to do. So, you could work on an assignment. Pay attention to this cool idea. You may not hear it anywhere else. I could work on my assignment and I could hand it in before the due date. The teacher would give me feedback and guidance and mentoring to enrich me and deepen my knowledge. And if I fixed those things and handed it in again, then I could get my mark. So the goal was to encourage every student in the class to accomplish an A, because you could accomplish an A in everything, because if you handed it in on early, you could get feedback. You also were expected to make your assignment and get the other people in your group to look at it and give you feedback. Sometimes in other school contexts that's called cheating instead of peer learning. Mm-hmm. It's shocking, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So at the time I just thought, oh, this is what people do in college, right? Because I had nothing to compare it to. So we did all these assignments, I'd get it done, I'd get the feedback, I'd work on it some more, I'd hand it in, I'd work on it some more, hand it in, and I was getting all these A's. Because it was about me learning more, versus now that I've been a teacher for 23 years in university, you're supposed to accomplish a bell curve. Everybody hands in their assignments on the same day, at the same time, even 4 o'clock, and then my task as a teacher is to construct it into a bell curve, and we're done, right? That that is so different than the Rogerian way. The Rogerian way is through your whole life cycle you're going to be learning. We're all in this together. We're all learning together. And they had to give you a mark because you're in a college and you're in the belly of the beast. The college needs marks. But the goal was, if you keep building on what you're learning, theoretically in a group of 20 students, all 20 students could have gotten an A. In my 23 years of teaching, I've been scolded at least 3 times by my higher-ups for giving too many A's, because I've often done this exact thing with my students to say, well, send me your draft and I'll give you some feedback. Give me your draft again and I'll give you some feedback. And I've told students, I want you to check each other's work before you hand it in. And I've been scolded for this kind of, like, are you encouraging the children? yeah, there's a Freudian slip, right? My bosses think you're all children. I think you're all adult learners, right? The goal is when you graduate and you go work in an agency or a context that you all share all the knowledge, that you come to see your team as your comrades and your colleagues and you help each other, versus that constant competition. Here's another little example of one of my personal little piss me off things, right? Students, every year I get 1 or 2 students who say things like this, like, I worked hard on this assignment and I got an A, but I know this other person in the class, they didn't work as hard as I worked and they also got an A. And I'll say to them, well, you don't necessarily know the work as well as I know, because I've read everybody's assignments and I've been doing this for 23 years. And also, if you get an A and she gets an A, you still have an A.
Yep.
But some people have been socialized to believe, if 3 of us got an A, I want to have like an A plus then. Or I want an A plus plus plus. No. It's
so
okay.
They needed to be novel in order to be
and
of value.
They're wishing somebody has to be below them, because they've been socialized about hierarchies and pyramids and who's the smartest kid in the room and who's the, going even further, who's the prettiest girl in the room, who's the richest person in the room. That always kind of like doing that, rather than let's all share whatever we know. And why do I care even if everybody else in the room got an A, I still got an A. It's a good day, I got an A. Why are you doing that in social work? I find that offensive and repulsive. I find it obscene when students in social work are highly competitive like that. To me, that's the opposite of our social work ethic. And in retrospect, I can see that this client-centered 2 years of training and development imprinted upon me in a way that I can't get rid of, because I loved it and I saw it as hopeful and effective. And this is also this whole generation. In the family counseling course, we talk about, where are you in the life cycle and where are you in the era or time of your culture. These folks here, the client-centered, they often were the peace, man, love, wow hippie people. Montessori school, that, freedom to learn, the flower children, that kind
Free
of
love.
Free love, exactly, right? And so now we're more in an era of
back to going to conservatism.
Yeah, like pull up your bootstraps and everybody for themselves, each man and woman for themselves. And
I've heard that it's generational, that you switch between conservatism and liberalism.
Yeah, exactly. And this was an era of peace, man, love, wow. That's where the Rogerian client-centered folks come from. But interestingly, what I'll tell you is client-centered, peace, man, love, wow hippie people, let's say, often were more organic and more collective and more kindness oriented and accepting and non-judgmental. And in those ways, I believe they were also and are very parallel to many indigenous ways of being. Indigenous, because, when you think of the hippies, you think of them, building a little log cabin in the forest and planting potatoes and stuff like that. And often that's what indigenous life is too, about like
organic and communal living.
Organic, communal, not being a great big hoarder of resources, like modesty, sharing, and also respect and non-judgment about diversity. rather than winners and losers and on top and on bottom and who's got one up.
Yeah, it's not my garden, it's the garden.
Exactly. Well said. Yeah, it's not my garden, it's the garden or our garden. Mm-hmm. Right? So more embracing and welcoming. And so this is, I think, in retrospect, part of how come I've come to love Indigenous ways, and I feel more comfortable around Indigenous people and Indigenous students. I've never had Indigenous students come to me with that, she got an A and I got an A, so my A is worth less because two of us got an A. That is more of a settler.
Yet again, white people.
I've heard recently that a term called Karen. Shut up, Karen.
Okay, Karen.
Yeah, and I've seen, had I known that word, and now that I do know that word, should a student come to me and complain that she found that she got an A but somebody else got an A and she knows for a fact that that person didn't work as hard on their A as she worked on her A, I'm going to say, shut up, Karen, because that's the t-shirt that they're saying now with Black Lives Matter and everything, right? Mm-hmm. About entitlement and privilege, and also mind your own self. I don't need to worry about anybody. When I was in this, we didn't worry about did somebody else get a 72 and I got a 71, right?
Well, like you can constantly compare yourself, but yeah, there's that, like if you're comparing yourself to others, you almost lose out on your ability to improve yourself.
Right, exactly. Focus on what your skills are, what you need to learn, and where you are in this journey. And this is especially, I think, profound and so relevant and timely, because some people are like, oh, this like Peace, Man, Love, it's the 60s, it's not relevant. I think this is way more relevant now in this part that it's lifelong learning, right? So if you're engaged in lifelong learning, and here I am 60 years old and I'm learning how to do videos and iPad and the phone that has the amplifier and all these things, what will I be learning when I'm 72? Tuba, for example, was telling me I need to learn how to do telepathic holograms, and I was like, Tuba, I'm not ready for that. Right? Mm-hmm. So this is the New World Order. We all are learning through the whole life cycle. So whether you got a 72 and I got a 71, I don't have time to focus on that because I'm focusing on, I need to learn this skill here right now. I need to learn how to do my income taxes more efficiently and on time. I need to, submit my medical documents. I need to understand municipal taxes. There's always something to be learning. Mm-hmm. And we're all going to be at different levels at this. So if you go back to my first part of this story today, that when I finished grade 8, and then when I was about 19 or 18, I went back to adult upgrading. I was at grade 4 math, but I was at grade 12 reading and writing comprehension skills. Mm-hmm. This is the New World Order, right? That I might be at a PhD level in regards to feminist issues, but I'm at a grade 2 level of using my phone. Mm-hmm. Don't say yes so quickly. You could did a polite pause there. But that's the New World Order. Through the whole life cycle, if you constantly have to learn all kinds of things, we're all going to be in different spots. We're all going to be independently on a journey. And Rogerian approach cherished that and valued it and celebrated it. So rather than saying, well, you're not the smartest person in the room now, are you? It said, you're a person on a journey. We're all on a journey. How can I help you with that?
Yeah, insight. It was like we call that the humanistic approach, yes. Because the whole point is that as a human, you're supposed to grow.
Each of us finding our own full potential, and each of us is going to have a completely different. Someone's trying to break in again, so we have to interrupt this video for a cat moment. There she is. So, I see this as very, very beautiful. And so this was, for me, the whole beginning of this was practicing eye contact, body language, silences, trust, non-judgment, non-hierarchical, encouraging each person to be their full self in all the ways they wish to be their full self. Tenderness, kindness, helping people find their own core values and beliefs. All of these learnings that I did have served me, I think, quite well, quite thickly and lushly and richly, whether that was in my role as an immigrant settlement worker or in my role as a therapist in an acute care sexual assault treatment program, working with eating disorders, working with injured workers. All these paid jobs that I've had, I've used these skills every single day. Every single day. They've never failed me. Sometimes it will get you in organizational conflict because many times the organizations that we work in, they do have a hierarchy. They do have limited resources, and they'll say, oh, we only have spots in this program for 10 people, so you have to assess these 30 people. You have to see which ones most accurately fit with this. So you're forced to create those little hierarchies and so on. So as long as we're able to separate that, to say the organization is insisting I do this, if I wish to remain in my role as a teacher or as a program coordinator or facilitator, whatever your task is in that agency, and to say that directly and honestly to the clients. My own personal values, my own beliefs are not in harmony with this, but my job in this agency is there's 30 people applying. I can only let 10 people into this program, but I want you to know I believe you could benefit from this program. I believe you deserve this program, but unfortunately at this historic moment, that's not how this is all set up. I'm sorry about that. That's completely different than saying, unfortunately, you're not qualified for this program. You don't really fit our criteria. Right? That's a judgment, that's a rejection, that's a hostile energy. Rather than celebrating, you're a good person on a good journey and you deserve this, but the truth of the matter, so in client-centered, that would be called confrontation. So I'm not confronting her. We often think of confrontation as like fighting and challenging, but the two of us are looking at this truth over here and we're confronting it. The truth of this situation is this, so confronting it. Now, what are my assessments and what are your assessments of what we could still do that would help you to be on your journey? Maybe come back in 6 months, or maybe I'll fill in this form with you and you could get this other program, or something that still tries to enrich you and forward you on a journey. Right? So again, quite like indigenous ways of non-judgment, acceptance, non-hierarchy, the collective, we're all doing our thing. So, bringing this now more to a fuller piece, guess who Carl Rogers' daughter is? That's right. She's an art therapist. So from Carl Rogers with his PhD and his famousness and whole schools of thought and 1,000 books published of the Carl Rogers way, the client-centered way, the humanist way. The next level, person-centered. See, she calls it person-centered instead of client-centered. Person-centered expressive arts for healing and social change. Hey. So this book right here, The Creative Connection for Groups, Person-Centered Expressive Arts for Healing and Change, and her name is Natalie Rogers, and she has a PhD, and I'm going to read you some of the back of her book here. And in case you weren't able to watch the other videos, last year, almost precisely a year ago, I finished my 5 years of training as an art therapist through the Vancouver Art Therapy Institute, and this is one of the books that I've leaned on in my journey in that way. So, this is what it says on the back of the book. Here is a source book of such compassion, depth, and practical wisdom that its span and influence could extend even to healing the hurts of nations. Fascinating in concept, rich in design, it is a work that brings the expressive arts into groups, resulting in personal and collective healing and transformation. So, going further down here, this book is an outstanding new contribution to the fields of counseling, psychotherapy, group work, and personal growth in the expressive arts. The creative connection for groups demonstrates the importance and vitality of person-centered expressive arts as a major approach to psychotherapy and group facilitation. And it works within here, this particular book, personal narrative theory, detailed professional procedures, moving examples, numerous illustrations and photographs, and applications to a wide variety of settings, populations, and cultures. Yay, Natalie Rogers. So I hadn't realized that sort of the next space from client-centered Rogerian to expressive arts therapy was one blade of grass kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
I had admired his work and been very committed in an authentic way. It wasn't a suit that I put on from 9 to 5 as a social worker. It was who I became, right? A Rogerian client-centered person, right? And then the things that I was really, really drawn to, and that was through the women's movement largely, Take Back the Night, International Women's Day, December 6th, and noticing how do we organize these protests and rallies? How do we invite people to participate? How do we help people feel that they belong? What does this mean to you to get involved with this group or this practice? Circles for healing. I went to incest victims workshops and retreats and all of these things through the feminist movement where we made art or we made drawings, or a very kind of quick example, at one of these incest healing groups, there were about 30 women who came to this event. It was a 3-day retreat. And one of the ways the facilitator opened in the morning was there were a whole bunch of flowers in the middle of the room on a blanket. And they were, red flowers, crinkled flowers, dried flowers, juicy flowers, fresh roses that hadn't budded. There were still buds and so on. Mm-hmm. And then the first thing in the morning was each person was asked, go and pick up a flower from the center of the room and put it in front of you as a way to express how you're feeling right at this moment. So you could maybe pick something all prickly and a dried rose with thorns, and you could pick a little daisy, and I could pick some red, robust, I'm thinking petunia, but that's not the word. It'll come to me. There's a big flower that's fluffy and red and juicy.
Peony?
Peony, a peony. They can be red, pinky, lush, and they smell, and So each of us, simply by making that one gesture, you walk to the center, you pick something, and you put it in front of you. Boom. 29 people now know something about how you feel right at this moment without us even using words. I can look, oh, you put a dead flower, you feel really dry today, you feel kind of unvital, you feel unlush, you feel used up, you feel sad, right? Just, this is so potent when if you've ever had these experiences. Then at lunchtime you pick a different flower from the center and you put it in front of you, right? So implicitly it's also respecting. So you're a daisy right now, but at lunchtime you could be a peony, and hey, at the end of the day, as we close up the group, you could be a maple leaf. Wow, there you go, right? And I've had my 3 things, you've had your 3 things, the other 27 people have all had their things. Can you see how that is so different than I got an A and you got a B+, right? It's intrinsically saying we are all in this moment having 30 different emotional profiles, all of which is true, authentic, sincere. I witness you. Mm-hmm. It's not a hierarchy. It's the authentic diversity, mm-hmm. and respect and tenderness. Without a lot of blah, 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 blah. Or, oh, I see that you have clinical depression. Or, I see that you have, what was the one? Avoidant attachment disorder. Or you have, what was the other one we were saying this morning? Oppositional defiant disorder or something, right? Oh, you're a daisy and you've plucked the petals off. Okay. I get something from that. I get an emotional something. I get a vibe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to do this little infomercial today about client-centered, about how it draws into or grows into art therapy, creative therapies, how in so many ways it's different from evidence-based and behavior mod and cognitive therapy, all of which have a place. I'm not saying they don't, but I'm saying for myself, my values and beliefs, and my work with Indigenous communities and other really vulnerable and oppressed communities, this approach has never let me down. It's always given me tools and resources to be authentic and tender with people, which is how I wish to be. I admit that this might not work if, let's say, you were a social worker in a jail with 240 convicted pedophiles. This might not be the approach that would work. But if you were working in a women's shelter with 30 women who have been oppressed, beaten, traumatized, this has served me well. This gives me good stuff. And I'm not even sure if this would not work if you were working with 100 pedophiles in jail or wife assault convicted murderers or something. Maybe they too would respond well to tenderness, openness, non-judgment, respect, and an invitation to be authentic. Mm-hmm. Right? I haven't tested that. It might.
It'll probably work really well with kids too.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And so, although I know the client-centered Rogerian right now isn't the brand of the moment or the fad of the moment, more like this also links well with narrative therapy in many ways, helping people to tell their story, reframe their story, restructure their story. There's a few bits of solution focus that fit with this, but first you have to have built your rapport and your relationship. And a little side note, tons and tons of research have shown that no matter what your theory is, and whatever your stance or theoretical orientation, whatever you declare it to be, the number one thing that will matter for clients
is the relationship with you.
Is the relationship with you. So if the client feels seen, heard, valued, witnessed with tenderness, respect, and integrity, not judged, if they feel safe with you, whatever you do next will go better. Mm-hmm. If the client doesn't feel seen, heard, respected, if they don't feel warmth and compassion off of you, it doesn't matter what theory you're using, because they're not really listening to you anymore anyway, right? As any of us would. If I was talking to someone and I felt they didn't believe in me or respect me or offer me any human connection, why would I make myself more and more vulnerable to them? Why would I integrate any guidance or mentoring from them? Because I feel alienated from them.
I think you talked about that in a previous video too, where like you're talking to people usually at their darkest or like most like shameful moments, and they'll probably have a lot of guilt around it, so like they've got enough judgment from themselves and they don't need it from anyone else.
That is such an important point you've brought back into it. They already judge themselves, right? We all do that. Even, the person who's had 100 years of therapy and has had a gentle, good life, they still will often be in their core selves, their own critic. So you don't have to say to them, oh, I see you have a drinking problem. Well, they know that. That's why they came to see you, or I see you're a homeless person, right? They know that. That's why they're at your shelter. You don't have to push them down. They already know those kinds of things. And they may have already had 1,000 people put their judgment or shame or grunge on them, right? So it maybe by trying something different, it will open them up and give them fresh possibility around their problems and situation, right? Pull up your bootstraps. They've already heard that 1,000 times, right?
Life's not fair.
Life's not fair. Suck it up, buttercup, right?
No.
Like, they've heard that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just let that go. That's not your place. And a very common indigenous idea is, until you've walked a mile in somebody else's moccasins, you can't know, right? Like the same, that was part of why in the Rajir Client Center, 2 years of training, the belief was, if I haven't had my good cries and my good shame, like processed myself in a good way through my shame or my self-loathing or all the shadow stuff, if you haven't engaged with that stuff on a soul level for yourself, it's going to be hard to bring other people to those places, right? If I've never had a really good cry in front of 10 other people, and let's say clients start crying, I'm going to be like, okay, so today's session has been effective. I think we can start to wrap things up now, because I'm going to be uncomfortable watching somebody having a deep, snotty cry, right? Sometimes that's exactly what your clients need, is 20 minutes of silence. That's another thing. In Rajir Client, they talk about just be the silence. Just be, let your eyes show love and concern. Let your open body language show love and concern. And be comfortable with the silence. Maybe that's what they need, is just to know I'm present, I'm with you, I'm available, I'm responsive.
But there's no pressure on you to talk, regardless of whether or not we're in this room or not.
Yeah, it's your time to talk. It's your time to share.
And if you choose not to, that's also your prerogative, and you are totally ready and welcome to do that too.
Yeah, yeah. It's try it sometime. Sit with somebody for 20 minutes and encourage them to have that silence. Many settler people, blah, 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 blah. Very vocal, eh? And silence can make us uncomfortable. So anyway, so my commercial for today, my little thing here was that everybody learns at their own pace. Much of what we do as social workers is we're encouraging people to learn. As you go through the life cycle, you're going to learn different things at different paces. The standard human growth and development formulas that we often find in the textbooks have become quite disrupted for many people. Like in my case, at age 3 or 4, my father's having sex with me. He was raping me, which is one of those developmental things that you're not supposed to go through to your wedding night, let's say, in your early 20s. And I also was working at age 15, earning a living, but I only had grade 8, right? So many of us are that, whatever that trajectory of in our book, The Expanded Family Life Cycle, they've got developmental phases, but many of your clients are going to be all over the place with that stuff. We talked earlier in a video about you might have a baby when you're 15 and be a single mom, and then at age 30 you might get married and have married someone who already has 2 kids who are 15, and so on, right? So all those steps have been a little bit disarrayed for the whole world, but then now the learning thing is our whole life cycle. I might be in the public work sphere until I'm 70. And therefore, until I'm 70, I'm going to be learning how to figure out stuff every single day, right? That's the new world order. And it used to be, once you finish high school, like say at my grandpa's era, you finished high school, you got a job, and you just stayed in that job till you were 65, and
Then you retired
and that's it, right? One job.
Yeah.
Most of us now, I think they're saying like 30 jobs or 3 major career shifts during your life cycle, and the same geographically people change. It used to be you grew up in one community, and maybe you moved 3 farms down and you lived there for the rest of your life. And many of the people we meet now, they live in Vancouver, they might go and live in France, they might go live in Winnipeg, they might go to Newfoundland, they might come back to Prince George, right? So people are learning and changing and developing over the whole life cycle, and please consider using these ideas, client-centered, humanist, Rogerian, person-centered expressive arts. They dovetail in a really good way. And I think for us as practitioners, it also, one of the really beautiful things that I think, just as a final little icing on the cake here, if I make it really clear with every client I work with or every group I work with, this is your group, this is your hour and a half, this is your conversation. You've told me 3 things that are uncomfortable in your life. Out of those 3, which one for today would you choose to talk about? See? This actually puts, in a way, a lot of burden in a particular wholesome, I think, robust and muscular way on the client to use this space well. And what that means is at the end of the day, more often I can go home and go, not my stuff, right? Versus if I'm saying, we've got 3 modules to get through today, we're going to do this and this and this, we're going to do it in this order. And if you don't come back, or if you're not succeeding, I'm going to wonder, is it my fault? Did I not set the right terms or perimeter of engagement? Right?
And then you're taking away their choice, and probably then their motivation.
Exactly.
Because it's intrinsic if they chose.
Right. It's your journey. I don't know what's right for your journey. And many times clients almost want you to, like, should I get an abortion or not? Or should I marry this guy or not? Or should I divorce my husband or not? Or should I go back to school or not? Or should I take this job or that job? You're the person in the center of your journey. Let's explore that. What are some of your concerns or worries? What do you fret about? What thoughts just jump up in your mind? What's your worst case scenario? What's your best case scenario? What's your worst case scenario? What's your, right? You, because it's all about you, right? Mm-hmm. And I can be an expert on patterns, but you're the expert on you, which for many people is an astonishing concept, because they've been social. Well, my teacher tells me what to do, my husband tells me what to do, my parents told me what to do, and now you're just going to tell me to
be myself?
Be yourself? Yeah. Like,
what? Who is she?
yeah, exactly.
Never met her.
Exactly. So this kind of ripples into the whole existential thing, and everybody has the freedom to choose all kinds of things. But also when you choose things, you also will have consequences, and that's where we do the confrontation stuff. So we're confronting the possible consequences of this choice or that choice. So I'm not confronting you.
You're confronting situations or
the
whatever.
way the world works, or the way your boss might respond to this, right? So I think in a lot of ways it's very liberatory for us as practitioners, in that the more you own your life, the less I have to own any aspect of your life. I just have to ask myself at the end of the day, did I listen carefully? Was I compassionate? Was I fully present and available, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually for this person? Right? Those kind of things.
Did I do it because I want the best for them?
Yeah, it's them. So if you have 8 or 10 clients in a day, they each take their own story home with them at the end of the day. I don't have to take home their story with me.
Yeah, they're choosing what they work on. We'll choose next time.
Yeah, exactly. So consider this as a therapeutic approach, Rogerian, client-centered, person-centered, and also how it relates to art therapy. And there is a video on art therapy. We'll probably do more. And thank you, Carlene. Carlene and Tuva and I, we've grown to be like real comrades here through making all these videos. Mm-hmm. Thank you very, very much. I'm proud of y'all and us and everything in the world. Sometimes I'm even proud of the world because there are people like Carl Rogers and his daughter Natalie Rogers. Bye.